A young woman full of life and ambition gunned down in cold blood. A love triangle, jealousy, and a web of deception unravel before the world. Was this a crime of passion or a calculated murder? Shannon Crawley, a woman scorned, accused of murdering Danita Smith, the fiancé of the man she once loved. But as the investigation unfolds, shocking twists emerge: lies, manipulation, a desperate attempt to escape justice. A 911 call reported a woman lying at the bottom of a staircase outside an apartment complex. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident. Perhaps she had tripped and fallen. Her purse, keys, and wallet were scattered around her, yet nothing appeared stolen. Even her money remained untouched, ruling out a robbery. But something felt off. When first responders arrived, they quickly realized this was no ordinary fall. Detectives soon uncovered shocking evidence that turned this from an accident into a full-blown murder investigation. Danita Smith was born on November 10, 1981 in New Bern, North Carolina. She was the pride and joy of her parents, Dale and Laverne Smith, and grew up in a lively household with her three siblings, Derek, Darius, and Danielle. From an early age, Danita's vibrant energy made her stand out. Friends and family described her as someone who could light up any room, and her warmth and infectious smile left a lasting impression. Her happiness shone through every photo, capturing a woman who truly embraced life. A dedicated student, Danita excelled academically, graduating high school with honors before attending North Carolina Central University. Initially majoring in English, she later discovered a passion for photojournalism. Captivated by the power of visual storytelling, she quickly earned a reputation for her exceptional photography skills. In her personal life, Danita found happiness with her fiancé, Jermier Stroud, a police officer from Greensboro. They met in college and built a strong relationship over 6 years before getting engaged. Their future seemed bright, but one challenge loomed: distance. After graduating in 2004, Jermier moved to Greensboro for work, while Danita remained in Durham. Though only an hour apart, the separation meant relying on weekend visits. Unbeknownst to Danita, this distance may have created more than just a physical gap. Jermier had become involved with a colleague, Shannon Crawley, a 911 dispatcher and single mother of 2. On the morning of January 4, 2007, just after 10 a.m., a frantic 911 call came in from a Durham resident. He reported a horrifying scene outside an apartment complex: a woman lying motionless at the bottom of the stairs, surrounded by blood. When first responders arrived, it was too late. The woman was unresponsive, just as the caller had feared. Authorities soon confirmed her identity. It was Danita Smith. Detective Sean Pate of the Durham Police Department led the investigation, arriving at the scene to assess the situation. At first glance, it appeared Danita had suffered a fatal fall. Her belongings, keys, purse, and wallet were scattered around her, supporting the idea of an accident. But as investigators took a closer look, the truth became far more sinister. As officers examined Danita's belongings, something stood out. Her wallet still contained a significant amount of cash. If this had been a robbery, why would the perpetrator leave the money behind? Investigators quickly questioned whether theft had anything to do with her death. No security cameras had captured what happened, but a closer examination of Danita's body revealed the truth. This was no accident. A fatal gunshot wound to the head had been concealed by her position, initially leading responders to believe she had fallen down the stairs. With this revelation, law enforcement launched a search for witnesses. The apartment complex, typically bustling with students, was quieter due to the holiday season. Still, officers found a few individuals who had noticed something unusual. The most valuable account came from the maintenance director, who reported seeing a woman fleeing the scene around the time of the incident. She was described as a tall black woman with a fair complexion, driving a burgundy SUV. Not only had the maintenance director seen the woman, he had spoken with her. He recalled hearing a gunshot and noticing her visibly shaken. When he asked if she had heard it too, she admitted she had and appeared extremely upset. He suggested they meet elsewhere to report the incident together, but instead, she left. Oddly, his 911 call was not the first. Another call had come in nearly an hour earlier, but when officers arrived, they found nothing, no body, no evidence of a shooting. Had Danita's body somehow gone unnoticed? The complex was large, but it seemed unlikely that responders had missed such a crucial discovery. As news of Danita's death spread, loved ones rushed to the scene, including her fiancé, Jermier Stroud. He immediately sought out Detective Pate, eager to speak. As is standard in homicide cases, investigators look closely at the victim's significant other. When asked about his whereabouts that morning, Jermier claimed he had been at home sleeping after a late shift. However, he had no one to confirm his alibi. While not the strongest defense, police were still gathering information and allowed him to leave. After spending time with Danita's family, Jermier went home. But the next day, investigators contacted him again with a crucial question. Did he know anyone who drove a burgundy SUV? His answer changed everything. Without hesitation, he provided a name: Shannon Crawley. With that revelation, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Initially, suspicion had lingered around Jermier, but now another figure had emerged in the investigation. When pressed further, Jermier confessed to having had an affair with Shannon Crawley. He described their relationship as a mistake, claiming it had ended nearly a year earlier. According to him, the breaking point came in 2005 when Shannon became pregnant. They ultimately decided on an abortion, which, from his perspective, marked the end of their romance. Despite his insistence that their relationship was over, Shannon remained in his life. Though they were no longer romantically involved, they continued speaking frequently. Jermier insisted their connection was nothing more than friendship, but it soon became clear that Shannon may not have shared that view. Even after their breakup, she maintained a presence in his life, attending his church and later purchasing a home near his. At the time, Jermier dismissed these actions as coincidences, but investigators saw them as something more. As they pieced together the timeline, it became evident that Shannon's attachment to Jermier had never truly faded. He initially claimed that Danita and Shannon had never met, but as he spoke to investigators, he admitted something unsettling. He now believes Shannon had been stalking him for quite some time. Looking back, certain details that once seemed insignificant now made sense. He reiterated that he had been the one to end their relationship. Then came a critical detail. The last time he had seen Shannon was on Christmas Eve 2006, less than 2 weeks before Danita's murder. That night, he arrived at church with Danita by his side, proudly introducing her as his fiancé. Shannon was there. Her reaction was one of complete shock. Until that moment, she may have believed that she and Jermier still had a chance. But now, she was confronted with an undeniable truth. Jermier had moved on, and he was preparing to marry someone else. With mounting suspicion, investigators sought out Shannon for questioning. They visited her workplace to ask about her whereabouts on the morning of the murder. Shannon claimed she had been at home caring for her sick child. She made no effort to deny her past relationship with Jermier, openly admitting to their history. However, her version of events drastically differed from Jermier's. According to Shannon, their relationship hadn't ended because of an unwanted pregnancy. Instead, she claimed it was because she didn't want children at all. This directly contradicted Jermier's claim that their relationship ended when Shannon became pregnant and had an abortion. When asked if she knew Danita, Shannon insisted she had never met her, believing Danita was Jermier's ex-girlfriend. However, investigators found this response suspicious. Given the evidence, it seemed likely that Jermier had kept his relationship separate, leading Shannon to believe she was the only woman in his life. The next question was critical. Did Shannon own a firearm? She denied it. But soon, investigators uncovered a lie. A co-worker, Ronald Simpson, came forward and revealed that Shannon had purchased a revolver from him in October 2006. This was a major breakthrough. The weapon matched the caliber used in Danita's murder. Not only had Shannon lied about owning a gun, but she had also bought one just months before the killing. Detectives then analyzed phone records. Jermier's records showed his phone had remained at his home during the time of the murder, supporting his alibi. While this didn't fully clear him, someone else could have used his phone. It was a point in his favor. Shannon's phone records, however, told a different story. Despite claiming she had been home all morning, cell tower data placed her in Durham, about 60 miles from where she was supposed to be, near the crime scene at the time of the murder. Confronted with this evidence, Shannon continued to insist she hadn't been there, but the case against her was growing. Investigators then seized her burgundy SUV and tested it for forensic evidence. The primary focus was gunshot residue, and the results were damning. Traces were found on the steering wheel. This strongly suggested that Shannon had fired a gun and then driven shortly before or after. One final piece of the puzzle remained: the maintenance worker's testimony. Though no formal lineup was conducted, he consistently described the suspect as a tall black woman with a fair complexion, driving a burgundy SUV, a description that fit Shannon perfectly. On January 9, 2007, Shannon was taken into custody and formally charged with Danita Smith's murder. Surprisingly, despite the severity of the charges, she was released shortly after on a $100,000 bond. Her lack of prior criminal history likely played a role in the court's decision, along with her job as a 911 dispatcher and her role as the sole caretaker of her two young children. Shannon wasn't willing to sit back and wait for trial. In May 2007, just months after her arrest, she and her attorney took an unexpected step. They voluntarily walked into the Durham Police Department to present their own version of events. What Shannon revealed turned the case on its head. She now claimed that it was Jermier who had been stalking her after their breakup. According to her, he constantly called, showed up at her workplace unannounced, and made her feel unsafe. She even alleged that a concerned co-worker had offered her a gun for protection, knowing that Jermier, as a police officer, carried a firearm. She admitted to accepting the weapon, but insisted she later regretted it and got rid of it. Then, she dropped a bombshell. Shannon claimed that on the morning of Danita's murder, Jermier had forced her into her own vehicle at gunpoint. She alleged that he made her drive to an unfamiliar apartment complex, Danita's residence, where he took her phone and keys before stepping out of the car. She said she sat there, waiting anxiously until she heard shouting. Though she couldn't make out the words, she recognized Jermier's voice arguing with a woman. Moments later, a gunshot rang out. According to Shannon, Jermier ran back to the car in a panic, ordering her to drive. She said he crouched on the floor in the back seat, urging her to leave as quickly as possible. She also claimed that when she briefly stopped and made eye contact with the maintenance worker, she hoped he would recognize her distress. But with Jermier pressing a gun to her back, she had no choice but to drive away. Her story, however, had immediate flaws. Investigators questioned how she could explain the gunshot residue found on her car's steering wheel. Shannon insisted that at some point during their escape, Jermier had grabbed the wheel while moving from the front to the back seat, leaving the residue behind. Then came another critical question. If she had never been at the crime scene, why had her phone been detected in the area at the time of the murder? She had no reasonable explanation. Investigators wasted no time confronting Jermier with Shannon's allegations. He vehemently denied every claim, maintaining that he had been at home during the murder. His phone records supported this, but they weren't definitive proof. Someone else could have used his phone to create an alibi. Meanwhile, Shannon remained free on bond and was later granted permission to relocate to Charlotte, about 100 miles away, to live with her family. But the drama didn't end there. In June 2008, Shannon made yet another shocking accusation, this time claiming Jermier had attacked her. According to her, she had been out walking her dog early in the morning when Jermier suddenly appeared outside her family's home. She alleged that he assaulted her at knife point, held her captive for hours, and subjected her to sexual violence. Police launched an immediate investigation, but their findings completely discredited her claim. A medical examination found no evidence of sexual assault, and more importantly, surveillance footage proved that Jermier had been nowhere near her that morning. He was accounted for in his hometown, making it physically impossible for him to have been at the scene of the alleged attack. With her story fully debunked, police concluded that Shannon had fabricated the entire incident. Despite this, Shannon remained out on bond for nearly 2 years before her trial finally began on February 8, 2010. The prosecution argued that Shannon had become obsessed with Jermier and viewed Danita as an obstacle to her future with him. They claimed jealousy had driven her to eliminate the competition. The defense, however, insisted that Shannon was being framed, asserting that Jermier was the true killer. Yet they failed to provide a clear motive for why he would have committed the crime. Instead, they painted him as a violent, controlling man, hoping to cast doubt on his character. However, Shannon's credibility took a major hit when the jury was allowed to hear about her previous false accusations against Jermier, including the rape allegation that had been thoroughly disproven. Her legal team fought to keep this information out, but the court ruled against them. Jermier testified as the prosecution's key witness, detailing his relationship with Shannon, their breakup, and the troubling behavior she exhibited afterward. He came across as composed and credible, though the defense countered by highlighting his years of deception toward both Shannon and Danita. A critical piece of forensic evidence further damaged Shannon's case. While the murder weapon was never recovered, a bullet fragment from Danita's body matched the type of gun Shannon had purchased just months before the crime. When Shannon took the stand, she stuck to her original story, that Jermier had forced her to drive to Danita's apartment and that she had no knowledge of his intentions. She testified with confidence, never wavering under questioning, and for a moment it seemed she might hold her ground. Then, the prosecution introduced the evidence that sealed her fate: tape recordings. Shannon had secretly recorded conversations with Jermier after Danita's murder, allegedly to coax a confession out of him. However, her defense team had chosen not to use the tapes, raising suspicion. The prosecution played them in court, and as Jermier's supposed voice filled the courtroom, something was off. The voice on the recordings was unnaturally high-pitched, nothing like Jermier's usual tone. Even Danita's friends and family, who knew him well, testified that it did not sound like him at all. The prosecution argued that Shannon had staged the tapes, possibly hiring someone to impersonate Jermier in a desperate attempt to frame him. By then, her credibility was shattered. In the end, the jury found Shannon Crawley guilty of Danita Smith's murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jermier, though cleared of wrongdoing, left law enforcement and transitioned into a career in financial advising. He eventually married and started a family, moving forward with his life. But no outcome could undo the tragic loss of Danita Smith. She was a bright, promising young woman with so much left to accomplish, dreams that would never be fulfilled. Though justice was served, her true legacy lives on in the hearts of her family and friends who continue to honor her memory. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast. Share your thoughts on the story, like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next episode when we bring you more crime stories from around the world, stay vigilant.